Welcome to NFL Nexus, the place where we go deep on the moves that make or break a franchise. Today, we are putting the Indianapolis Colts under the microscope, specifically their defense, which is facing a massive, critical offseason. See, they've done a great job locking up their offense for the foreseeable future, but the other side of the ball, well, it's a completely different story. It's facing a total teardown, and that leaves the entire team at a serious crossroads.
All right, so here's the game plan for how we're going to tackle this. First up, we'll look at this stark contrast between the team's offense and its defense. Then, we're going to get our hands dirty and do a full position-by-position diagnosis of that defense to see where the real pain points are. After that, we have to talk about a major changing of the guard, an era ending in Indy. Then we'll get into the fun stuff, a blockbuster trade proposal for an all-pro player. And finally, we'll wrap it all up by debating what the Colts' best move is from here.
So to really understand what the Colts are up against, you first have to see this glaring imbalance on their roster. Honestly, it's like they're two totally separate teams sharing one facility. One side is built to win now and for the future, and the other side, well, let's just say it looks like it's being held together with duct tape.
In this slide right here, man, this paints the picture perfectly. On the left, you've got the offense. Everything is stable, it's secured. They've got their franchise quarterback in Anthony Richardson, and they paid to keep his #1 target, Michael Pittman Jr., in town. The core is locked in, and the future looks incredibly bright. But then your eyes drift over to the right side, and whew, it is a completely different world. The defense is just bleeding talent. It's been a revolving door of departures this offseason, with starters leaving for nothing in free agency, and key leaders either traded or about to be. And to plug all of those gaping holes, they brought in exactly one new projected starter. It's a massive talent drain that leaves them looking awfully vulnerable heading into the season.
Okay, so now let's go deeper. Let's really perform a full diagnosis on this defense. We're going to break it down unit by unit and really look at the roster to figure out, on paper at least, which groups actually got better and which ones took a pretty big step in the wrong direction.
Let's start with the good news. The one area that is an undeniable strength. It's the foundation of this entire defensive unit. The big boys on the interior D-line. This group is absolutely rock solid, anchored by two of the best in the business, the perennial disruptor DeForest Buckner and the human wall himself, nose tackle Grover Stewart.
Now, this is the one spot where you can tell the front office made a real investment. Of course, you still have DeForest Buckner, who is just an absolute nightmare for opposing offenses. The guy practically lives in the backfield. And right next to him, you've got the monster, Grover Stewart, a guy who just eats up double teams and single-handedly shuts down the run game. But the real upgrade here is the depth they added. They went out and got Derek Nottie from the Chiefs, a guy who knows a thing or two about winning, with multiple Super Bowl rings. That's not just a body, that's championship DNA you're adding to your locker room. And on top of that, you bring in Jerry Tillery, who brings 53 career starts with him. This unit isn't just strong at the top, it's deep and it's battle-tested.
So let's just put a pin in this. This defensive tackle group is the only unit on this entire defense that has clearly, without a doubt, gotten better. This is the bedrock. This is what they have to build everything else around. Because as we're about to see, the rest of the building is looking pretty shaky.
And now we pivot from their biggest strength to what might be their biggest weakness. The linebacker core has been absolutely gutted. When they traded their captain, their leader, Zaire Franklin, to the Packers, they didn't just lose a player. They ripped the heart and soul right out of the middle of their defense.
Losing a guy like Franklin creates this massive black hole, not just in production but in leadership. So what's their plan to fill it? Well, they're putting a lot of faith in Jalen Carleys, a guy who barely saw the field last year because of injuries, and a newcomer, Akeem Davis-Gaither. And get this, Davis-Gaither is the only new player projected to start on this entire defense. Let that sink in for a second. And behind those two, the depth is being called extremely shaky, which is a nice way of saying it's a bunch of guys with little to no real NFL experience. This is the scary part. They're trying to fix a unit that was already getting torched in pass coverage last year with a handful of unproven players and question marks.
I mean, there's just no other way to spin this one. This group is significantly, demonstrably weaker. They lost their undisputed leader and replaced him with guys who are, at best, unproven. It's an enormous gamble, and it is a clear step backward for the defense.
Okay, let's keep it moving and talk about the guys on the edge, the ones who are supposed to be terrorizing opposing quarterbacks. If the linebacker room was a subtraction by addition, well, the defensive end position was a complete demolition. Both starters from last season, gone.
So the Colts just stood by and watched as both Kwity Paye and Samson Ebukam signed elsewhere. Now look, maybe they weren't world beaters last season, but you're still losing production you can count on. Ebukam had almost 10 sacks just 2 seasons ago.
But what's really fascinating is how they decided to replace them. They brought in Arden T and Michael Clemens, two guys who, for their entire careers, have been role players, rotational guys, not the number 1 or number 2 pass rushers. To put it in perspective, neither one of these guys has ever even gotten more than 7 sacks in a single season. So they've basically swapped out their starters for career backups and are just hoping it all works out.
This just screams a massive, flashing, red alert problem. Where in the world is the pass rush going to come from in 2026? You've let your top 2 edge guys walk and replaced them with situational players. It's just another obvious downgrade for a defense that is quickly running out of reliable playmakers.
All right, let's head to the back end of the defense, the last line of defense, where, you guessed it, the safety position is another huge area of concern. Losing Nick Cross in free agency was a big hit, and their grand plan to replace him is, well, it looks a lot like an open casting call between a bunch of guys who have never held down the job before.
Okay, so let's be fair, it's not a complete train wreck. Cam Bynum is a solid player. He led the team with 4 picks last season. You can pencil him in, you know what you're getting. The massive, glaring question mark is who is playing next to him. The job is basically up for grabs between Juanye Thomas, who's never been a full-time starter, and Hunter Wohler, a rookie who has never played a single snap of professional football. And yeah, you've got the veteran Jonathan Owens there as a safety blanket, but behind him, the depth is described as severely inexperienced. They are literally one twisted ankle away from a full-blown catastrophe in the secondary.
So you see the pattern here, right? It's impossible to ignore. Just like at linebacker, just like at defensive end, the safety group is weaker than it was a year ago. They've replaced a known quantity, a proven starter, with a scratch-off lottery ticket and are just praying they hit the jackpot. It's another undeniable regression for this defense.
Now, this isn't all just about stats and depth charts. There's a real human story unfolding within this defensive rebuild. The Colts are getting ready to say goodbye to a 9-year veteran, a former Pro Bowler, and by all accounts, the true emotional leader and heartbeat of their locker room, cornerback Kenny Moore II. His story is honestly one of the best in the league. Think about it. Moore shows up in 2017 as an undrafted kid claimed off waivers from the Patriots. He was an afterthought, just another body in camp trying to make the team. But through pure grit, determination, and a ton of talent, he clawed his way up to become a Pro Bowl player and, for a time, the highest-paid nickel corner in the history of the NFL. He literally reset the market for his position. It's an incredible story, but now it seems like both he and the team have agreed that it's time for a fresh start.
So why the amicable split? Well, it really boils down to 3 simple and pretty cold business decisions. Number 1, money. It's always about the money. Trading him saves them over $7 million in cap space, which they clearly need. Number 2, age. Moore will be 31 years old this season, and in the modern NFL, paying an 8-figure salary to a slot corner on the wrong side of 30 is just not smart team building. And number 3, succession plan. They already have his replacement in the building. They used a 3rd-round pick last year on Justin Wally. He's young, he's cheap, he's healthy, and it's his time to step up and show what he can do.
So you've got all these holes. The defense is actively getting worse at 3 of the 4 major position groups. Leaders are heading for the exit. How on earth do you fix this mess? Well, one very respected analyst has thrown out a massive, bold idea. A blockbuster trade to bring in a 7-time Pro Bowler to be the new anchor for this entire unit.
The idea comes from Ralph Vacchiano over at Fox Sports, and it's a doozy. Go get all-pro safety Budda Baker from the Arizona Cardinals. Now just look at the proposed price tag here. The Colts could potentially land one of the truly elite defensive players in the league, and they wouldn't even have to give up a 1st or 2nd round pick. A 3rd rounder and a late round pick next year for a guy of Baker's caliber, that feels like an absolute bargain. And for the Cardinals, it makes sense too. They're in a full-on rebuild. Getting Baker's huge salary off their books while adding more draft picks is a clear win for them.
Vacchiano's logic is laid out right here, and even though it says Daniel Jones, let's swap in Anthony Richardson's name, because that's the real story. The belief inside the Colts building is that they are a playoff team if Richardson stays on the field. So, if you believe you're a contender, you have to make contender-level moves. And adding a proven elite veteran, a guy who's been to 7 straight Pro Bowls, would provide exactly the kind of stabilizing presence and leadership that this young, leaky, and struggling defense is crying out for.
But, and you knew there was a but, this is the big debate happening right now. Is safety really the problem they should be throwing all their resources at? Let's take a look at the other side of the coin, the counter-argument that suggests this big, flashy trade might be aimed at the wrong target.
This whole idea forces the Colts to really look in the mirror and ask themselves a tough, strategic question. When you have so many weaknesses at pretty much every level of your defense, is going all in for an all-pro safety truly the smartest way to use your very limited assets?
The case against trading for Buda Baker is actually really compelling when you break it down. First things first, you have to look at the draft. By all accounts, this year's safety class is supposed to be one of the deepest in years. So why would you trade away precious draft picks and take on a monster contract when you could probably find a really good long-term starter on day 2 of the draft for a tiny fraction of the cost? But maybe more importantly, is safety even their biggest need? Is that the fire you should be racing to put out? We just spent 10 minutes detailing how their pass rush has been completely gutted. You can make a very, very strong argument that finding an edge rusher who can consistently pressure the quarterback is a far more pressing issue. Some have even thrown out other names, like maybe making a run at a guy like Josh Sweat from Philly. The hard truth is, the Colts' defense is a ship with holes everywhere. They need an edge rusher, a linebacker, a safety, and with Kenny Moore leaving, they'll need a new number 1 corner. Can they really afford to put all of their eggs in the Buda Baker basket?
And that leaves the Indianapolis Colts standing at a huge fork in the road. Which path do you take? Do you go for the quick fix, the splashy move, make a blockbuster trade for a star like Buda Baker, and just hope his talent can cover up all the other cracks in the defense? Or do you play the long game? Do you stay patient, hold on to those valuable draft picks, and try to build a more complete, more balanced defense from the ground up? One choice offers a shot of immediate adrenaline. The other offers a more sustainable future. It is a massive, franchise-altering decision, and there is absolutely no easy answer. So, what do you think they should do? I want to know. Drop your takedown in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you got something out of this breakdown, do us a huge favor. Hit that like button, and more importantly, subscribe to NFL Nexus so you never miss one of our deep dives. Oh, and one last thing. If you want to help support the channel and get something awesome for the football fans in your life, check out our custom coloring books. They're perfect for kids, grandkids, even adults. The link is right there in the description, or you can just scan the QR code on your screen right now. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you next time.